In this instructional video, we will be looking at Rakmin and the rules when playing the Rakmin minigame. Okay, so to start with, we're going to look at the most simple and basic of Rakmin puzzles. And that is a puzzle that requires 2 tiles and 2 dice. Now, when playing Rakmin, you have some tiles in front of you. You flip them over. Okay, and when you're starting a Rakmin puzzle, normally you have set in front of you a target number. Okay, so in this case, our target is 1. So we're going to be adding, subtracting some numbers, trying to make the number 1. When you start, you have to pick a starting tile. And in this case, in any case, it's up to you. Normally, the tile with the most variety is easiest to work off of, but sometimes that might not always be the case. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and pick this one that's got the lower numbers, and that will be my starting tile. Once you pick this tile as your starting tile, it's played and locked down. And so we start now, and this is my target number of 1. That's my target dice. I'm going to be rolling 1. This is called my value dice. Oh, rolled it off the screen there. So I rolled a 5. So I'm going to put that right there. So you roll your value dice. It goes on the center of your starting tile. This is also called your active tile. So it's the one you're building off of. In this case, it's the only tile down. I've got 1 tile, 1 active tile, and it happens to be my starting tile. Okay, so now my goal is to take this number, the number 5, add it to one of the 4 sides on this tile, and then add that to one of the 4 sides on this tile here. And I need to make the number 1. And so this goes back on here. And now I look at this and try to see how can I add that dice to one of these sides to one of these sides and make the number 1. And that's my target. So if I do 5 plus 2, that makes 7, minus 6. 5 plus 2 minus 6 would equal 1. I'm going to go ahead and turn this so it's a little bit easier to see going this way. Okay, so 5 plus 2 minus 6. 5 plus 2 is 7, minus 6 is 1. This progresses forward to that spot, and this one's completed. Some people flip them over when they're completed, which you can do, but it also makes it harder for when you're allowed to go backwards sometimes if you get in a jam. And it's hard to remember where you had these turned, and it makes a difference. So you can flip them over. I normally keep them face up. So I move forward. This is now my new active tile, and if I had more tiles to add to this, I would roll and I'd start connecting to this tile. We'll look at a harder one coming up next. So this would be met if this was it on my puzzle. Whatever this is for, if it's picking a lock, finding something, persuading someone to do something, then this would be considered successful. Each turn that I take to roll, set up, do other actions with Rakmin tiles, that counts as a player turn. And so players going head to head with each other, racing, or just in general if you're trying to race against the clock, the sun's setting, the longer you take on this, the harder it will be to achieve different things you're trying to do. Okay, so there's a few things you could do if you get stuck in one of these. Say you rolled a number and it just wouldn't add up and you couldn't figure out what to do. You have a couple choices. You can re-roll your dice on either at the end of your turn, beginning of your next turn. You can re-roll and then just try again and see if you get a better number and you can add it up. Or you could say, no, I'm going to keep my number, whatever I rolled, and instead I've got this tile that I'm trying to figure out how can I add this to it. I can't figure out how to add that to it. You can swap for another tile and then see if that's a better one. When you swap, you have to wait till your next turn before you could play that tile. So you could swap, take a look at it. Okay, I could see how I could add this together, and then on your next turn you could play it and progress yourself forward. One other thing you could do with a bigger puzzle, say you completed that, you have a couple other tiles, by the way, you could swap out a whole hand of tiles for a new hand if you want to. Now, something else you could do is if you get in this position where you're like, man, these tiles don't work, I really don't like how I played this, you are allowed to back up and pick up your tile. But by doing that, you've now put yourself back a step. And where players will find that most useful is if they've played themselves into a corner like this. So they've progressed themselves all the way to this spot. And now what they've done is they've locked themselves to only be able to use two sides. Since this is the active tile, they have to build off of it. They've locked themselves to only be able to use two sides of the tile. And in that situation, they might say, you know what, this is going to be really ridiculous to try to complete. Let me go back a step. And then on next turn, maybe they build out this way instead, opening up another side. Okay, so that is the basics. We're going to go ahead and look at a puzzle real quick and see how it plays out. This is going to be the first puzzle that you will see in the introductory chapters. This is the lock-picking puzzle. And I'll get the basics of it set up, and then we will see how it plays out. Alright, so we're going to go ahead with the lock-picking example. In this example, players would be dealt out 4 tiles. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself 4 tiles. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I've got myself 4 Rakmin tiles. In the case of Chapter 1, your target is going to be 1. It will then, when you complete it, it'll go to 2. And when you complete 2, it will go to 3. And after you reach that target, the chest unlocks. You've successfully picked the lock. And so that's our goals. We have our value dice here. Okay, so I've got my 4 tiles. We go ahead and flip them. And we can look at them, decide which one will be the starting tile, and work from there. So in this case, I think I will use this one here. Notice this tile here has very little variety. It's going to be the hardest. It might be the hardest to use. So we'll just go ahead and start and see where we go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and roll. And it's a 2. And my target is 1. And I was hoping to have the easy out. This is -2 right here. This is 2. So if you had -2 and 2, it'd make 0. If I had a 1, I could just simply do it that way. But I'm not going to be so lucky. Let me see what I have as options. So the fun thing about this is you guys might be seeing an option right now that I don't see. And when that happens, players just keep quiet and let somebody struggle, and they might say that there's no way to do it. Okay, in this case, I don't see a way for me to succeed with this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what I would do. So like I said, this one's going to be hard to use. Sometimes the 7 or 0 is hard to use. But I'm going to say this one is probably going to be the hardest to use, and this one. I'm going to go ahead and swap those 2 out, and I would get 2. Okay, so that would take my turn. Time would progress, and so that'd be a turn. So I go ahead and flip those now. I don't get to re-roll, but I now have new tiles in my hand, so this can help me. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this now. Okay, so I've got it now. Okay, so as you can see, I didn't get to re-roll, but because I swapped out tiles, this will work. Because I pulled a -2 on this one. Okay, so I've got 2 plus 1 is 3 minus 2 is 1. So I succeeded in that phase of the puzzle, and I progress. Now another player, if I'm playing with other players, they may be a step ahead of me since I had to swap out some tiles. Okay, so now my goal is 2. I go ahead and re-roll for value, and I got a 2 again. Let's see how this plays out now. So, let's see. Okay, this isn't too hard. So, I've got 2 here. I've got 5 there, so that's 7. So if I could subtract 5 from 7, then I would have 2. So right there, that's a pretty easy one right there. 2 plus 5 is 7, minus 5 is 2. Pretty much the 2 5s cancel each other, and I move forward. Okay, so then we move to 3, and I roll for value. I got a 3, and I lucked out on that big time. So 3 goes right here, and there's a -4. The green one right there is -4. I happen to have a +4 on that red one there. So 4 minus 4 is 0, plus 3 is 3. And I move forward. So not too hard on that one. I had that one little hiccup where I had to swap out tiles. It worked out pretty good in my favor, swapping out the 2. It gave me the tiles that were pretty useful together. And I now met my goal. And in the case of a lock picking, the lock would be unlocked. In chapter 1, my trunk would be unlocked. Now this is the simplest of puzzles in the introductory chapters. The others are just variations of this. There's a group one where we're working together, individual puzzles where you're working by yourself. There's puzzles that you're trying to track someone down in the different lands, and there's a puzzle going on in each of the lands. Now when you're out making your own quests and adventures, this is one tool you have for creating an experience where players are having to use logic and patterns to solve things. You'll also notice there's colors, and we didn't even mention those colors during the puzzling. The colors in the introductory chapters don't actually have a use. It's for players to come up with and talk about and find new ways of playing with it. And you'll find different uses on the Trivatch forum. Something you could think about colors having to connect. You could think about different rules for varying colors and how you're using them. But again, in the introductory chapters, the color's not used, so it's up to you guys to think up of new ways of creating challenging puzzles for other people. So that's how Rakmin is played. Again, it's a mini game that's in Rakasa and used for different purposes. Players, though, could come up with all sorts of neat ways of playing this game with each other, even outside of the adventures in Rakasa. So have fun with it, and we look forward to seeing all the different things people come up with.